you can plan your day, right?
Very good. It's 1 o'clock, and so we will thank everybody for attending the liquor control meeting for today. We have several items on the agenda, so it's going to be a little bit of a long meeting, and we do have a time limit that Steve was going to kick us out of here at a certain time. So we will begin. There are several items. Agenda item number 1 is approve the minutes of the March 24th, 21 meeting. If you've had a chance to review the minutes, and if there are any changes or corrections, we'd be happy to hear that. Otherwise, we will accept a motion. We have a motion.
No, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And that is Lydia on the phone. And so Lydia, you'll have to speak up whenever you want to. And I appreciate you attending. And so we have a full group today. So thank you for that. So we will.
Thank you.
We will start with review liquor applications 2A, application for a Class FA entertainment alcoholic beverage license for Fargo TS LLC, doing business as Sweet Shots, to be located at 3400 James Way. And Steve will get us started.
Thank you, Commissioner. So a couple of things before we get too far along here. I was informed when I came into the meeting today that we do not have a time restriction. The meeting after this was canceled, so we can take all the time we need to. Number 2, it was very difficult not to say aye when you were voting on that that first item there. Number 3, the final 2 items in 5, number B and C, we're going to postpone those for right now, and we'll be addressing that a little bit later. Okay. So, Sweet Shots. This is like Top Golf, only it's going to be in Fargo, so we don't have to drive all the way to the cities to do that type of an event. So the applicant it's down in the 52nd Avenue along the interstate kind of area. That's where the location is. The FA Entertainment allows them to sell full alcohol, to have a bar. They're, you know, with the FA license, it's the food and alcohol ratios. With this one, we also include the entertainment aspect of it. So the suite rentals for the places that they are going to do that, or the charge for a bucket of balls and those different things like that. So that license was created at least 10 years ago when we had the Fargo Billiards, and that has been a very successful business. The idea when we created that license was this type of thing, this and the next one that comes up after this, where we have an entertainment venue, and so we have a license that would fit that type of an activity. So we've run it through our process, which is we receive the application, review it before we pass it on. Then we route it to building inspections, fire, police, and health, and then the city auditors. And so everybody's reviewed it and signed off on it, including the police department. And so it would be a recommendation of approval unless you have any questions.
Do we have any questions? And I guess when you review there was only one of the partial owners had a DUI. That was basically the only thing that I noticed as far as the background checks. Other than that, there were not any other concerns. Is that correct?
I believe so. I'd have to, ask the police chief if they had any input on that. But so we do have a list that was included in your brown bag packet that are factors that we look at, and I believe that this person that had the DUI was long enough ago that we note it,
Okay.
but then we don't consider it because it was so long ago.
Okay.
One question, is the FA Entertainment, you say it does have a bar, or is there no physical bar?
Yes, a physical bar is allowed.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
For the servers that are working and serving the drinks, they'll all have to go through the same training that a typical server at a regular restaurant would go through, correct?
That is correct. All servers are required to have server training within the first 90 days of employment. We recommend that they do it quicker than that, but that's what the requirement is.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next item, 2B, application for a Class FA entertainment alcoholic beverage license for TC Entertainment LLC, doing business as Kingpins, to be located at 3485 Jacks Way. Steve?
Thank you, Commissioner. And so this is in the same area, same general area. So there's going to be two entertainment facilities that are being built currently in that area. One was for the golf entertainment, and this one is centered around a bowling alley. And so it'll have, I don't remember exactly how many lanes of bowling alley, but then in addition to that, there will be, games of chance and skill, pinball, different things like that. There will also be a full-service restaurant in there, and it seemed like there was another thing, but anyway, and it's the same license that we just talked about. So the entertainment gets to add to counting to that 50/50. Many of the owners, investors are on both of these licenses. And so again, it's come through, we've run it through our background check and haven't come up with any items that would cause us to hesitate in issuing this.
Very good. Any other comments or questions?
I noticed that one of the owners, something did come up on the criminal history, but it wasn't disclosed. You make a point to note when it is disclosed versus when it isn't. Does that affect the application process at all? Sorry, first time person here.
I'm going to have to defer to the chief on that one.
I guess the question or the answer would be perhaps. On this one, it looks like it was disclosed, unless I'm missing one here. Sometimes people do forget, and I think we look at if it's something that occurred long enough ago that maybe they forgot to disclose it or they weren't clear on what they should disclose. It's really, as the background check is conducted, more or less an interpretation, I guess, of whether they're being honest in that, and we would make a recommendation if we thought they weren't, or there was some intentional withholding of information, we would cause us to make perhaps a different recommendation to the board. But in this particular one, it looks like it was, says here it was disclosed.
This is for Michael Jones.
On our sheet, and it might be that she didn't get the updated sheet, but on our sheet, it says a DUI through Fargo Municipal Court, July 14th, 2017. Do the other
Yep,
members?
that's what I'm looking at.
Okay. And so your question was that there wasn't something disclosed? Or what's
It looks to me that it seems to say that this was disclosed or it was,
Oh,
or
I'm sorry.
there's no
Okay.
note about that.
Okay.
That might just be the preference of the person doing the background. We should probably be consistent on that. There's no information to indicate that it wasn't disclosed, and it would be beyond the time frame in ordinance in terms of consideration.
So Chief.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. So then, after reviewing all the owners, is your recommendation that we go ahead then, even with the infractions?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, if it was outside of ordinance, I would recommend no, but that time frame was within the ordinance structure.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I've got a question for Steve. And this would apply to both places we've talked about and existing places where you have a big building and there's various functions going on. Is there anything special, restrictions for where minors can be or where drinkers can be? Because I see at a bowling alley, they drink in the lanes, they drink in the bar, they drink in the pizza place, whatever. How is that monitored, minors in a entertainment venue?
Sure, that's a great question. So whenever we get an application, the applicants fill out, what they're designating as the licensed premise. So within that licensed premise, then, the general rule at the state level is that minors cannot be where alcohol is present. Okay, but then the state gives us a couple of exceptions, and then our city code tries to follow the state. In fact, we have some changes that need to be made to our current ordinances before August 1st when the state ordinances change. So the two major exceptions are they're both in a restaurant. So they define in a restaurant, and then the split is whether or not the parents are with and whether or not the food sales exceed alcohol sales. So minors can be present if the food sales exceed the alcohol sales and they're in a restaurant without their parents, okay? Or minors can be present if food sales do not exceed alcohol sales, but they are accompanied by their parents, provided that and this is the change that the state made, provided that they're 3 feet away from the physical bar. So when we have a facility like this, there's also, and I'm not thinking of exactly how it's worded, but there's an exception for bowling alleys that's in our code and not in the state code. That allows, if it's like an open bowl type thing, so families are invited, then minors can be there. But if it's in like a league bowl, then the minors would not be allowed in there. And I apologize, I'm not thinking exactly what part of the code that is. And it might have to do with table service. I think that if the minors are present, that there needs to be table service of the alcohol.
Steve, if you wouldn't mind me asking you a favor, I think it'd be good, especially if obviously the state's requiring us to do things at this time. So I think maybe you could send out an email with a summary of all that section to all of
Sure.
us. Because I think if nothing else, it'd be good to have it clear so the public would know too. And so we could maybe have it at our next meeting. But I think to have an email and maybe with the changes that are going to be going into effect too, I think that'd be a good thing, because it's a little bit confusing, I think, and especially to not have it in front of us is kind of a little bit. But I do think the flip side of it is, I think it'd be good for the public and the restaurants, because I'm not sure that everyone knows exactly what the rules and regulations are. So I think it'd be an opportunity to kind of clarify things.
No, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, especially in the case of the new golf venue, which I understand are growing like crazy around the country, and I would hate to have a family next to my golf group. So, it'll be interesting to see how that works.
Okay, we'll get that out to everybody.
That's excellent. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. Next, 2C, application for Class Z alcoholic beverage license from Big D's Bar and Grill doing business as Shotgun Sally's Rock and Roll to BB&E Partners Fargo LLC doing business as Twin Peaks Restaurant to be located at 1515 42nd Street South. Steve.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is a transfer. This is the first transfer that you've seen now. And we have an existing business that is selling their interest in the business, and the license then is going to go with the business. They're going to rebrand the business and are going to be Twin Peaks down in the future. But so this is a Class Z license. It does not have any food requirements, although Twin Peaks is known as a restaurant. So if they end up being more of a sports bar than a restaurant, they'll be okay with our license structure. So,
Steve, can I ask a question? Can you talk about the Class Z as far as, was this license, did the business sell the license, or is this a license that returns to the city? Can you talk a little bit about that?
so the Twin Peaks is buying the whole enchilada, I guess, so to speak. They're buying the restaurant business, the alcohol license, and I believe the the physical structure too. And so then, rather than continuing to operate as Shotgun Sally's, they're going to rebrand and then come out as Twin Peaks. Does that explain? Or
I guess my question is, so then there's a liquor license with this, and so does the city own the license, or does Shotgun Sally's own the license? That's my, at a certain date, didn't we change that where they returned to the city?
yeah, excuse me, with the Z license, it was always set up so that if the business is selling as a going concern, that that the license could transfer without, it returns to the city if the business closes. Okay, does that,
Yes.
okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I guess we can review the owners and things like that. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
I'll move.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, application to transfer a Class Z alcoholic beverage license from Downtown Holdings LLC doing business as Fort Knox to Vault Partners LLC doing business as Fort Knox to be located at 52 Broadway. Steve.
Thank you. This is very similar to the previous one. The Fort Knox was purchased by members of the RDO investment group when they thought that they were going to build in the downtown area where the parking lot is and Fort Knox is. Subsequent to that, Fort Knox, or excuse me, RDO relocated or went into the Block 9 Plaza. And so now the RDO group doesn't feel, they don't want to be in the alcohol business. And so they found investors that want to be in the alcohol business and are purchasing the business and the building and all that goes along with that. And so this one, they're keeping the Fort Knox brand and everything will look to the general public as if there has been no change. Obviously, they'll come in and, make some changes to the business model, but, it will still be operated as Fort Knox. Have received the application, done the background checks, and believe it's coming to you with no issues or concerns. There was one thing with the health department. They needed to still secure their health license on this one, so. But health has indicated that there were no concerns. It was just a matter of applying and being checked. They've had a health license in the past.
Very good. Any comments or questions? Once
So,
again,
I've got a
Go ahead,
quick
Bob.
question. Maybe this is for you, Dave. So if we approve it, but there's still things pending out there, what happens if those things aren't taken care of?
so we have done that in the past where we approve it and then what we recommend goes on to the city commission. And so we could put the stipulation saying, at the city commission meeting, you have to have these certain things done. So we have done that in the past, Steve. Is that correct? And so we have done that. I guess the whole health issue, Grant isn't here today, but I'm sorry, Grant, I didn't see you behind Steve. Could you talk a little bit about that, the concerns, or have those been resolved? I guess that's kind of our question.
I was involved in the email exchange, and I know that they have an appointment set up for tomorrow to do the inspection.
Just real quickly too, it's kind of, what we do is a pre-operational inspection. So the new owner comes in and we go out there and make sure they have all the operating equipment, everything's working as intended. And that way it's pre-operational saying, yep, you're good to go. And then we fill out the license with them. We categorize them in which category the food is, if you're food 1, 2, and 3, I kind of mentioned that before. I know there's a lot of information in the last one. So my folks will go in there. We don't perceive any, hiccups or anything that's going to hold it up. It's just a technicality. We want to get in there and make sure they have what we need before we issue them a health license.
So can I ask, Grant, would you prefer that we put that let's say that we recommend this and put that stipulation, because more than likely it will be resolved before the next commission meeting, or do you think it's not necessary? I guess that's my question.
You know, it doesn't hurt. I think it'll be resolved before the next commission meeting, but there again, that's just the checks and balances that we use for this board. So it wouldn't hurt to just say, you know, complete and obtain a health license. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks,
for
Grant.
questions.
And I apologize, you were sitting right
No,
behind
I don't.
Steve, so I wasn't like, I was ignoring you, but you're literally. And I
got
know
you.
you always try to sit so you're on camera, so you have to pay attention all the time. Thanks, Grant. You bet. So that was a very good question. So I guess if there's any comments or questions, but could you give us an example, Steve, of just saying we have this stipulation to add?
Well, I was thinking that the motion would be approved on the condition that health licenses are secured or something along those lines.
That sounds good. Any comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept the motion.
Yes.
Yes.
I move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we are on to application E to transfer a Class RZV alcoholic beverage license from 670 Events Center LLC, doing business as Sanctuary Events Center, transfer due to 5% or more stock ownership change, located at 670 4th Avenue North.
So this is an application where they are actually buying the stock of the organization. And so the Sanctuary Event Center license was created when we worked with Aaron Duma at Sanctuary to, you know, structure a license that would allow an event center, you know, that operates only when there's events, that type of thing. And Aaron now Aaron Duma is at a point where he wants to go off and try some new ventures. And so the long-term manager is applying for, you know, the stock transfer and the license transfer so that she can continue operating the business the way it has been in the past. And so, you know, we've gone through the background check and the application, and it does come to you with no reservations.
Quick question on the RZV designation. When I'm looking at the materials we received last time, it said no bar. But don't they typically have bars set up where they sell alcohol, or is the definition of bar where you sit at it?
So their bar, it's no physical bar that's like a permanent bar. The bars that they have, like if there's a wedding or something like that, they're the temporary portable bars. And that was kind of the differentiation.
Okay.
So can I ask Steve, so do they get an E license for their temporary bar? Or is that how does it work?
No, the temporary bars are used within the license structure.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Some of the events that they have do not have, you know, alcohol service, in which case there's not a physical bar there.
Okay.
So, does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we will accept a motion.
I move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, now we are on F, application to transfer a Class F alcoholic beverage license from DTSG Incorporated, doing business as Famous Dave's, due to a 5% or more stock ownership change located at 2581 45th Street South. Steve.
This, in this case, the licensee, the owner of the business, actually passed away. And so this is a transfer now to his successors. And it is, again, where they're buying the whole, all of the stock in the organization. There's no name change or anything like that. The F license, this was actually kind of an interesting thing to me. It was the first time that I had seen somebody come in and they said, you know, typically we would have anticipated this would have been an FA, and they would have had a bar at the business. And this was the first time that I've seen where somebody said, well, we really don't need the bar, and so we'll save the initial fee that the FA costs versus the F license. So the F license is full alcohol, but no bar. It does require that food sales exceed the alcohol sales. So, done the background check on these owners, and They're not local owners. They have multiple businesses throughout the Midwest. But there were no issues on the background checks.
So can I ask Steve, how often, so obviously it says food must exceed alcohol. How often do we check that? Is that randomly? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our alcohol checks, there's two ways that we do it. We do it annually with an annual report. Generally, the businesses will get their state sales tax report, and on there, it's easy to see how much is food and how much is alcohol. But then on top of that, we do, on a 3-year rotation, we have an independent auditor that comes and reviews the information also to make sure that industry norms are being met so that they're not, kind of playing with the numbers or anything like that. So we check two ways. One is annually through the renewal, and then the second way is that on a random basis, every 3 years we have an independent auditor check.
So it isn't like it's a random selection, it's like every 3 years consistently?
Yeah. Well, it started out kind of random, but now it is on a 3-year cycle, and so pretty much, people get put into one group that they're with. As new businesses come on, I try to keep that balanced. We do about between 30 and 35 licensees a year that we have audited.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question for Steve, and I apologize, but hopefully this is an education process for us. Is there any requirement for any of the stockholders or the manager to be a resident of Fargo?
So a long time ago, there was a residency requirement for the manager, at least the manager. Some people don't mind commuting, and so we would actually have some people that were driving in from like the lakes or something like that, and they were the managers. And so we got rid of that residency requirement. Some cities in North Dakota, and maybe even some that are close by us, have a residency requirement at least they used to have a residency requirement for their owners. But we do not have a residency requirement for the owners. We just like the managers to be able to respond within a certain, amount of time.
Okay, thanks.
That makes
So
sense.
that's a good question, but I would say, obviously, back in the day, that might have, but I mean, nowadays, you can't require people to live in your city. That just doesn't, I don't know if that would be very popular, very well taken, but back in the day, that's the way it used to be, and I think it's a change because people should be able to choose wherever they want to live, so. Any other comments or questions? We will accept a motion.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. Letter G, application for a Class GH alcoholic beverage license from K&K Management LLC, doing business as the Frying Pan, to be located at 310 Main. Steve.
So the next three are actually new license issues. So the Frying Pan is looking at a beer and wine, and they're looking at having that when they move to their new location. And they have a patio built where people can enjoy an alcoholic beverage sitting outside if they so choose. So the owners of the Frying Pan have a number of frying pans in the tri-state area, and they do have some alcohol experience at a couple of theirs. And they, we talked to them to see if they were interested in, full alcohol, just beer, just wine, what they were interested in. And I really get the feeling that this is kind of an experiment to see what happens, and that if they're not pleased with the way things go, that they would probably, just say, okay, we really don't need that. So, but as far as their background, I think one of them had, some item on there that was older, and so nothing that really would stop us from, saying that they can't have an alcohol license.
Very good. Any comments or questions other than my editorial comment? The Frying Pan, that's an iconic place, obviously in downtown Fargo. So we're obviously there's some remodeling going on, so we're very happy that they're going to remain kind of in the same location because they're a valued asset to our town for sure.
Steve, one question I have is, kind of back to the, out-of-state owners and the criminal checks. I noticed you do North Dakota, Minnesota, and certain, surrounding states, I guess. Do you do the state of, their residency, if they're, resident of Iowa or Texas, or?
So that'll have to be answered by the chief.
Excellent question. In some instances, we are not. If you look at that one, they talk about there's no free South Dakota way for us to do that. That's a process that we're working through with the city attorney that will require applicants to get an FBI background check so that regardless of what states they lived in or didn't live in, we will know for certain that the due diligence required in the ordinance is met. Right now, we're not able to do that, but we are creating that process going forward.
Chief, can I ask a follow-up? Oh, no, go ahead.
Sure.
So are you, right now, I always assumed that there was a national database where you could request, and can you talk about, are you
Sure.
making this change because of liability, or can you talk?
Well, one of the things that we discovered as we were kind of reevaluating this board was that the department had was not actually doing that national check because by FBI rules, we can't do it. It has to be either the person requesting it or our state entity, North Dakota BCI, doing it at our request or at the applicant's request. So that process has to be solidified yet. We're working with Assistant City Attorney Nancy Morris on that particular issue. So going forward, we will have more certainty. But as it stands right now, we just aren't able to do that by rule.
Do you have an idea of how long it will take before this is in effect?
We're working quickly.
I can stand up and address it. I have been in contact with the BCI, and hopefully they will then start to do that. If not, we will go directly to the applicant to have them complete the checks and have that done.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Patrick Jones is listed as owner/manager, and then in the investigation notes, it says that he doesn't have any ownership of the restaurant. Does that need to be amended?
Can you answer that, Steve?
Lydia's done her homework. Brian.
That's on the last page of the investigation.
Yep.
I think.
I really don't have an answer for you. I'm sorry. I'll have to reach out to see what his role is going to be. He has been the manager for a long time. So whether or not they, wanted to reward him with some ownership interest, I don't know. Sorry, I can't answer that right now.
So I guess in this situation, we might want to do the same thing that we talked about before and have a stipulation that that's clarified when this comes up at the city commission. Could we do that if possible? And if that's the wishes of the board, I think that would be one way to resolve it. And Lydia, that was a very good question, so I think it's something we want to have clarified. And with that, do we have any other further comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept the motion.
I move to approve with the stipulation that the ownership is clarified.
Very good. We have a motion and we have a second. Any other comments or questions? Steve, do you have that down so we have that correct? Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we're almost done with the first page. We're almost done with the first page, so we're making progress. H, application for a Class GH alcoholic beverage license from Soiree Suites doing business as Soiree Victorian Tea Room to be located at 3 8th Street South. Steve?
Thank you, Commissioner. This was very a fascinating lady that stopped in our office. She has been running this tea room for a while and now wants to add beer and wine to her her offerings. She grew up in Russia and has immigrated to the United States and spent some time teaching at NDSU and ended up staying here in Fargo. And so I just really enjoyed having the opportunity to visit with her. So I'm hoping that she'll have, I don't know if you've been down to South 8th, but it's a very quaint little building. And so anyway, it seems like it'll be very nice addition to the Fargo area. There were no issues, I believe, in the background check.
Well, I guess I do have a couple questions. It said that, she had some credit issues.
Yeah.
And can you just talk a little bit about that? And then the other thing I want to say is, I do think we want to be encouraging of people that have new business concepts. And that's the thing that I really like. And Steve goes above and beyond most times trying to get people to fit into the certain categories. And if we have to, think of something new. But I think that's part of what we should be trying to do. So I'm sorry to ramble on, but Steve, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I had a couple of gentlemen that stopped in yesterday, and when I told them that we really didn't have a license that fit what they really want to do, they said, well, how about if we do, we'll get a restaurant license and we'll start doing this. And I said, I'd rather see you get into the right license than to try to, massage a license or that type of thing. It looks like she's had a little bit of slow history on paying some things, but it looks like most of those items have been cleared up. Do you know, Chief? Is that accurate?
Well, none of those would fall within the ordinance.
Okay. Chief said none of those would fall within the ordinance requirements anyway for causing a denial.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments or questions? We will accept a motion.
I move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I believe that's the first tea room we've ever approved, Steve, so we should maybe have a special celebration. It sounds like a cool concept, so I'm looking forward to seeing it succeed. Okay, now we're on to I, application for a Class GH alcoholic beverage license from Jay's Smoke and Barbecue LLC, doing business as Jay's Smoke and Barbecue to be located at 1322 Main. Steve.
So this area may be familiar to you. It's the old Mom's Kitchen and Tailgaters. So Tailgaters obviously has a liquor license, but in the Mom's Kitchen side, back in the day, you could order your breakfast or whatever, but you couldn't get the alcohol on the Mom's Kitchen side. Now that Jay has opened his barbecue facility there, he has had many customers request to be able to get a beer or a glass of wine or something like that. And so he didn't have a liquor license, and what they ended up doing was if they wanted his barbecue, they would have to take the barbecue and go over into Tailgaters. He would like to be able to just serve the customers on his side. So one of the concerns that I had when talking to Jay was, the flow could traffic flow from one side to the other? And they have the kitchens separated and they have the facilities separated so that customers and even staff can't go necessarily easily from one side to the other. And so his license would just be for the old Mom's Kitchen side. So
is there common ownership then between those two restaurants?
Not of the two restaurants. There's not ownership, any common ownership or anything. The building has one landlord. So they're both renting their space from that one landlord.
Steve, did they have to submit a floor plan to show, because we had some issues with people with co-owned businesses and things like that. So to make sure that it's clear so we don't have issues in the future.
Yep, we do have a floor plan with this one, and it designates just the area that used to be Mom's Kitchen. That side of it, it has nothing to do with the tailgater side.
And so the owners are clear about that too as well, that they're required to not have passage between the two because it's a separate license for both places.
Correct, yep,
Okay.
we've had that discussion.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we will accept a motion.
So moved?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. Number 3, new liquor license classification request, on and off sale wine event space. And I don't know if Ellen is here. Is that what we were going to do, is have her get up and speak if she wishes to?
That was the intention. I don't see Ellen here.
And if she isn't, we might want to continue that then, because unless you want to talk about it, Steve.
You know, I can present the idea, but I guess if you have a lot of questions about it, then, you know, we probably would need to continue it. Again, an individual with a very interesting concept. So she has an association with Maxwell's in West Fargo, has worked for them, and has some ties to that group. They're interested in creating kind of like a wine cave, and their location is in a building that would facilitate it. It would, you know, it would look kind of like the Sonoma Valley kind of thing, you know, where you have like a wine cave. I think that, you know, what she wanted to do was a taste and take. So it would be an on sale and an off sale, so you could taste the wine, and then you could also take it with you. The thing that I thought was most interesting is that her concept was to operate only as an event center. So only when there's an event. She wouldn't be open to walk-in traffic. You would have to have an event scheduled, and you know, to be able to operate the facility. It would be an event center that would not only just, you know, do wine, but could also do other things too. The first thing that we always look for is, you know, is there an existing application or an existing liquor license structure that would be able to facilitate this concept? And probably the thing that, you know, there's the RZV, the Renaissance Zone license that would be close, but that is full alcohol. And it would not allow the off sale part of it. And so with those things in mind, that we have an event center, she really wants wine only, and she wants on and off sale. It was my recommendation to her that she come to the city and see if it was something that the city was interested in creating, and then we would have to go to the city commission to be directed to create the license, if it's something that you know you find is a worthy concept.
So Steve, I think I would like to have her be here. So I mean, unless, because I think we would all have questions. And the other thing is, it'd be good for the other people here to know what's going on. And I visited with her as you did as well. Super nice, and it's a neat concept. But I think if it's all right with everybody, we'll just continue it, because the other thing is, I think that shows how, if you're really legitimately passionate about it, you would come here and talk about it. So it might be that communication was confused or something, but
I'm thinking that's probably it. You know, normally this board would have met on a Wednesday, and we had to move it up a day.
Right.
So it might be that. And it could be that maybe I didn't get her email written down quite right when I tried to notify her or something too.
So if that's okay, we'll continue it. But the other thing, so we encouraged her to talk to some of the other liquor establishments, just to talk to them about her concept, to make sure whatever, that it worked well with them, and I don't know if she did, I think she said that she did, and so things like that, I think it's a great concept, but it would be kind of complementary to other places.
Yep.
Where is it intended to be located?
The VIP room
Yep.
is what I understood?
Oh,
Yeah.
in Delaware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's not in operation right now, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Anthony, that has the VIP room, with COVID, he
Okay.
just wasn't able to keep that open on a daily basis. He's forfeited his liquor license, but is operating a catering type business.
Okay.
So he's sticking with the food, kind of what he knows.
So this will be kind of a pop-up event?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So do we have a motion? If that's all right, I think we should
A
continue.
motion to continue, yeah.
Do we have that?
I'll make the motion to continue.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. And so now we are on to number 4, liquor license renewal updates.
So, thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to let you know where we stood with our liquor license renewals, and just to keep you up to date. So, we do have a requirement that all licensees attend an annual meeting, and we had 2 licensees. One, Chipotle has 2 locations, and they didn't have a representative, so they failed attending that, and then the Avalon Event Center did not attend. We are still missing our food sales from Juice It, that has a liquor license. We have some rosters. Passage to India is missing a roster. And then we have a couple of businesses, and this could probably be updated. The Fargo Country Club, Wild Terra, Nail Deluxe, and Worst Beer Hall, those 4 had not turned anything in. Now, subsequent to this coming out, I know Wild Terra had contacted my staff, and I suspect that they've got their stuff in now. Nail Deluxe, I'm thinking, is not going to renew, and then I still need to touch base with Fargo Country Club and Worst Beer Hall. The server training, a year ago, that was a bit of an issue, and we were trying to work through some things. And this year, happy to report that we have over 90% compliance with that requirement. And then there was an item on here that I wanted to mention. Last meeting, I talked about the liquor audit and a follow-up to that. And the Brutus Clubhouse at the Osgood Golf Course had failed their compliance requirement. I think they were at about a 47%, maybe a little lower than that. And so I did go out and I visited with them, and they are aware of what the ordinance calls for, that for the next 6 months, they would close an hour early, and then we would follow up with another audit at that time, and see if they can get their food percentages up.
So Steve, can I ask you, so if you don't mind just going through this, so the first one, the non-attendance for those places, so how does this work?
So that the ordinance calls for a $500 fine or penalty for non-attendance.
And so have they been sent a letter, or how does the notification go?
We did notify them. We have not invoiced them yet. I wanted to present this to this board before we do that.
So have we gotten a response from them?
Not much of a response. And actually, it's kind of interesting, that we have one day when we do this. We meet at 3 times during that day. We met at 10 and 1, and then again at 6 p.m. Between the finish of the second session at 2 o'clock until 4:30, well, actually 5:30, my staff and I contacted everybody that hadn't attended. And there's a lot of places it's where the notifications are going to a corporate office somewhere, and that's what happened with Chipotle. The notifications went to a corporate office and didn't get passed on to the local. We really emphasize that we need a local contact and we need a local email, so we can communicate with these businesses. In that case, you know, we called the number that it gives you for Chipotle, and we couldn't even get through. It got into a loop that said, you know, push 1, push 2, you know, that type of thing. And Avalon, we attempted to contact the owner and just were getting no response at all.
So would you summarize it? We're basically following our policies. These
Yes.
are the penalties that go into effect, and they are being notified, and so that's kind of the process. Is that correct?
That's correct. That afternoon, we called, I think we got a hold of 42 of the 44 people that hadn't attended yet. Some of them had planned on attending the evening session, but over half of them were kind of like, you know, taken aback that there was a meeting. So, and I started providing notice of that annual meeting in April, and sent out a lot of communication. It went with their renewal packets. There was, you know, a notice of the annual meeting. You know, certainly we don't want to be penalizing people, but you know, what we found in the past, and I know Commissioner, you were here at the time, you know, we had a lot of non-attendance, and then we would have people come to another meeting and tell us why they didn't come, and it was not productive. Once we put the penalty on, we've seen compliance, you know, get right up there. So.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Just give me an overview of what the annual meeting is about. Is it just kind of a renewal of the licensing process, or?
We talk about issues that are pertinent at the time. Over the years, you know, it's been different things. Chief Todd talked about gangs that were becoming relevant or prevalent in the community. You know, just different items, topics, I guess. This year with the change of this board, you know, being established, with a new police chief, with other things, you know, that are going on, you know, it does say in the ordinance too that the meeting will not take longer than 1 hour. So that's kind of our expectation of the licensees, is that, you know, they attend one of our meetings for an hour once a year.
Steve, is it the business owner who is required to attend, or can it be a manager, or?
Any representative of the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to invoice?
I don't know that we do. I can just follow the standard procedures and go ahead and do that. I just wanted you to be aware of where we were at in our license renewal. So last night, we had the city commission approve. Oh. Okay, so Nancy's telling me that we do need a motion, so.
I make a motion that we invoice them.
I second.
We have a motion and a second, and I would say the server training compliance, that's great. I think we've made lots of great strides there, and obviously our goal is to get 100%. I think that's, and the whole thing, we don't want to have fines and things like that, but you also want to have people following the rules, and everybody, you know, if everyone else is following that, then I just think it was, and back in the day, it was very frustrating. There were some places that never would attend, and so I think we've made good strides, and as long as we're following a policy and we're consistent, I think that's a good message to send, so.
Internally, we made some changes on how we communicate to the health department who run the server training program. And so we felt that those changes were very effective. And so, yeah, we're pleased to see this number be so much higher.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the last item on the agenda is Police Department Monthly Report, and that is A. Brewbird. And Chief, take it away.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for your service on this board. Much appreciated. And I appreciate your due diligence and attention to detail as well, because that makes our processes a little better. So I'm really happy to see that. The only thing I have for you today is a compliance check failure. So by Century Code, the city is required to do these compliance checks a certain amount of times during the year, and locations are selected. An officer will accompany a minor who is working with them on these compliance checks, and essentially we're just checking to see if proper carding and refusal of service for the underage minor occurs. In this particular instance, on March 29th, one of our officers, along with an 18-year-old, went into the Brewbird, sat down. The 18-year-old went up to the counter and asked to purchase a beer. The server looked at his license, which was accurate, listing him as 18, but served him a beer anyway, after which the officer then identified himself, and the information was referred, the violation was referred to the prosecutor's office. The server indicated that she had misread the ID. I guess our only recommendation is that the board follow the matrix in place for the violation. I know that we do have a representative from Brewbird who might have some information relative to whether or not they followed up and did any server training following the violation.
Chief, can I ask you a quick question? So isn't the first step, if they have a violation, that if they go through the training and then you can waive the fine? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. In the city ordinance matrix, it's a $500 fine which can be waived if they do the server training following the incident. I don't have the information as to whether or not that was accomplished.
The other thing is the IDs, we've talked about this, how they're difficult to tell a real one from a fake one now. And so it's very challenging. I have a lot of sympathy for the servers because I think it's a very difficult time. And maybe you can talk a little bit about, obviously they have scanners now that will hopefully make that job a little easier.
Yeah, sure. We've reached out to several liquor establishment owners over the past couple of months to address this issue, make them aware of some technology that will help them eliminate human error and eliminate fraudulent IDs. So there is technology that's just under $1,000, an ID scanner that will scan any picture ID card and identify whether it's fraudulent or confirm that the person is old enough to be served. So it's really a nice safety net, I think, for the owners of the establishments. And as we continue to work with the city attorney on shoring up some of our ordinances, from my perspective, I think that's something that we should require in certain establishments just for that reason.
Thank you very much. So from our perspective go
I
ahead.
have a question for you, Chief. So the scanners pick up what kinds of information?
They will scan, every one of the ID cards that are issued now has a scan code bar on them.
Yep.
Doesn't matter which state it's from. The level of fraudulent identifications is far above and beyond when any of us were young and foolish, and they create IDs that look completely legitimate. They'll have a barcode on there, but unless it's run through an ID scanner, because it can't fool the scanner in terms of its legitimacy, it will read it and tell you if it's fraudulent or legitimate. And if it's legitimate, it's just going to confirm the age of the person. So you'll see that there's no human error in that. And it eliminates, I think, a large part of, whether it's intentional or accidental. And I think it's a lot to ask an individual to now identify a fake ID just by looking at it, because you really can't tell the difference.
So I guess I have a question. If we know that works, is there a way we can require our businesses who are serving alcohol to have those?
Yep, 100% agree, and I've already made that request with the city attorney, and so we're working on putting together some potential ordinance changes that the commission would have to approve. But one of them is requiring for certain licensed premises. I think we may want to consider differentiating between something that's a restaurant bar versus a bar where a lot of people are going to congregate, kind of thing, to require that. Also, video and a certain level of video coverage in some of our establishments as well. So just from a public safety perspective, and also from a safety net from liability for the ownership.
Okay. And as far as the data that is collected from these scanners, who has the authority to view that data?
So the owner would have all of that data, and they can also share it with us if there's some type of investigation that's going on. Because it also tell us essentially who was let in, as long as they scanned everyone. Again, I don't, I think assuming goodwill that they don't need to scan someone who's obviously above age, but there's a certain, I think business standard, you would say, that we would expect our licensees to follow in ensuring that they're not letting underage folks in.
Excuse me, how disruptive is the scanning process if you're walk into a nice restaurant and, they kind of question, do they have to take your ID away and then scan it somewhere, or? how's that
It's
process?
well, it's handheld, but I think it has to be plugged in, although you might be able to take it with you for a period of time as long as the battery's charged. But again, I think the discussion is, what types of establishments should that requirement be made versus which types of establishments wouldn't we want to require it, because we don't want to necessarily interfere with the business model, but, for an example, straight up bars,
Right.
it's the business, and the owners that have implemented them have had very positive feedback in terms of not only finding people that they would not have suspected the ID was fraudulent, to being able to document trouble patrons. So that database that they have, if you would come in and let's say they threw you out for some kind of unruly behavior, they can make a note, so the next time you come in and scan in, they will know that, a week ago we had an issue. They might decide not to let you in again, So it really helps them in a number of ways, as well as kind of helps public safety aspects of it as well.
One more question on this particular incident at Brewbird. When I first read it, I didn't understand. His license, that was his real license, and he was an 18-year-old?
Yes.
Did they ever try to pass fake licenses during the compliance checks?
I'm not sure what you mean.
You've been talking about how good the fake licenses are.
Oh, do we ever try and use fake licenses? No.
Yeah, okay.
No, our compliance checks are completely legitimate. We're not trying to fool anybody.
Right.
We're just trying to make sure that it's compliance to show that they are following the law.
Okay.
I have one other question.
So,
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Lydia.
Lydia, go ahead.
we're talking about these scanners. They sound great. I really like the idea of having notes on, if someone's, had problems in that bar before. But this was a real license, and the person who accepted it had not gone through training yet, right? She hadn't gone through the server training.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so that I almost feel like that seems to be the problem here. If we're not if the servers aren't being trained in the importance of these kinds of things. And how long had she been employed at that place before?
That I do not know.
I'd like to know that. I'm wondering if, I know we have the guidance, it's 90 days is when they really should have them in compliance. That's the recommended time. If she's not in compliance within 90 days, that doesn't
Sure. And
look
I
great
think
for the company.
the other thing to consider also is there was no manager on site. So if you have someone who's
Yeah.
not trained, it's really a business owner's responsibility to make sure someone is there overseeing it. So I guess from my perspective, it doesn't matter how long she worked there. The owner knows she's not trained, and a manager should have been there to make sure this didn't happen.
I agree.
Go ahead, Kay, and then if you want to speak, can you go up to that podium over there?
I just have a couple of issues, and I agree with Lydia that she should have had server training before this happened. But also, I have a hard time looking at dates on a license. And if you're busy and you're under pressure, and it's so easy to miss that. And so I would rather see scanners in all of these facilities, and you enter and you scan your ID, and yay, you can drink or not, or whatever. And then that takes so much of the pressure off of the servers, and they can tend to what they're supposed to be doing. I sympathize with the servers because I can't read them myself. So it's, in a split second. So that's where I'm going. I'd like to see scanners all over. And I'd like to see the city support that. I'd like to see the city not require the businesses to have them, but that we give them to them at the cost of the city so that we can have access to that data. That
Very
would
good.
be my goal.
Oh, that's very good comments. Go ahead, and if you wouldn't mind giving your name and introducing yourself. Thank you.
Hi, yes, I'm Britt Belquist. I'm the owner of Brewbird. or one of the owners. And I just wanted to let you know that Morgan had been applied there or employed there just for a short time. With COVID changes, I think that some things got missed. Obviously, she didn't attend the server training, so we have switched our onboarding process now to make sure that each employee is uploading their server card when they're employed or on their date of employment or within 30 days, requiring them instead of the 90 days, and then that they sign up for the next server training class. And then we also have on our point of sale system, it does say like the date of birth that they should be if they're 21. So we've made sure that everyone's trained in on looking at that too.
If you don't mind, do you mind if I ask you a question? We've been talking about this reader. Is that something, have you looked into it, or would you consider doing that?
Yeah, we've used it at a couple of our other locations, and it does work out really nice. Wapaton, we have an event center there as well, and the police department actually gives us the scanners, so it's not a huge investment for us.
So I guess, Chief, that's the thing that, obviously, we heard that suggestion that, is that a possibility that it's a city thing? But I guess the debate you get into then is, well, then who owns the information? That's the only concern of mine. If the city gives out the readers, then does the city collect the information?
Sure. Well, I think the city attorney would have a lot of input on this, and that would probably be a good commission discussion with the city attorney.
This is great conversation, and I do think it's a good thing. And I think you understand that this is the first violation. So if she goes through, then whatever penalty is going to be waived. And so I think that is a good thing. I think we're very sympathetic here. It's a very challenging time. And so, but also we have rules where everybody else has to live by them. And so it's important for us to follow our policies. Any other comments or questions? And maybe you can talk about what do you need as far as action from us? Do we need an action on this? I guess that's a question to Nancy, where we say, that's my question.
Right. Well, I would really just recommend that the board follow the matrix in the city ordinance, which would again allow for, if server training occurs, for a waiver of any fine. Right?
It's a little off.
Oh, is that a little off?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The-
I'm a
the
little
server-
off. Let me get that corrected. Okay.
Server training has to be in place at the time of the failure in order to get so they would have had to have already had their server training. And if they have it, that's recognizing that somebody that can make a mistake, right? So if they've already had their training, then the penalty can be waived. But in this case, the $500 penalty, plus they're mandated then to go and have the server training.
So then the fine is not waived.
It is not.
See, to me, that seems a little bit harsh, I guess, but maybe that's just my perspective. But to me, if she hadn't had her training, if she goes through the training, then I believe that we should waive it. But that's not how it's written right now?
I'm looking over at Nancy now.
I don't know, and maybe the other, go ahead.
She hadn't been employed that long, so she has 90 days to get her training.
I guess that's,
So I would be in favor of waiving the fee after complying with server training, if that is legal.
well, our attorney
Awkward
is.
silence while we get legal advice.
I'm looking for the specific terms, because we have it that it may be waived. But I don't know if that is specific as to whether or not you will get certain training.
Well, she's doing that. Can I just make a couple comments on the rest of the agenda? We did have a couple of other items, and as we're working through this process, this is a new, some of this is a new process for us also. And so we discovered that we should not be acting on those two additional items that were on the agenda. But what we would like to do is have a special meeting to be able to provide the proper notice for those two agenda items. And so if this board is open to, a special meeting within the next couple of weeks here, so we can move forward with those items.
Sure, maybe you can contact us, and then the other option is that we can do like we did with Lydia joining virtually. We can do that too if
If we
it's
have to, yep.
difficult for schedule, so.
Right. First thing is going to be the availability of this room. It has to be broadcast. Second is the availability of the chief. He's the busiest guy I know.
I'll be available. Yeah, I think there's significant issues that we want to bring forward. We want to make sure that we're following proper protocol.
So you just contact us, Steve, as
yeah, we
early as
will.
possible and let us know.
Right.
And we'll make arrangements. Thanks. Nancy, are you ready?
I am ready. Okay, so the reading of the ordinance is a $500 penalty. This penalty may be waived if the person serving the alcoholic beverages as well as the management have server training certificates. So that does suggest that if they did not have the server training certificates at the time of the violation, it may not be waived. There will, however, this goes on, there will, however, be mandatory server training within 30 days for any employee or member of management not having server training. So in addition to the 500, that person must then get the server training within that 30 days. There will be no license sanction on the first offense. Does that clarify that in fact, because she did not have the server training and at the time of the violation, the $500 penalty is in place, she must then get the server training within 30 days.
It's clear to me, Nancy, but do you think that's a concerning loophole at all? Are you worried about, what that means for new servers if they have that longer interval to get server training, that there's no penalty if they break these rules? Do you think that is that a loophole you're concerned about?
I'm not sure I understand your question because the result is a $500 penalty, but then they must get the server training within the 30 days. If they have the server training prior to the violation, that $500 may be waived. So I think there is the incentive to get that server training earlier rather than later.
I understand. Thank you.
I'm conflicted because because to me, it's just seems a little bit harsh. Because I think that once she gets her server training, then this issue would not have been likely to happen. Anyway, and it's a small business, so anyway, that's.
I think the intention of the ordinance was to understand that anybody can make a mistake. So you can have server training and still make a mistake and still serve to somebody. And so the intention, I think, of the ordinance was that, if that were to happen, you've gone through, you've done your due diligence, and like you said, it's a busy day or whatever, and you glance at that license and you serve a minor anyway, that's where you get that forgiveness or waiver of the penalty, I guess. That was the intention of it.
Any other comments or questions?
So if we waive it, is it on the expectation? Is it on proof that the server did complete the training?
From what Nancy read, I don't think you have an option to waive it.
Sorry.
No,
We have
no.
misunderstanding. Apologize.
Nancy, you have to come up to the microphone. Oh, is
Sorry,
it-
Nancy.
No.
I'm really, I keep missing this point. Apologize.
We need to have Brian get microphones at our desk.
Yeah.
So the question is, she did not have the server training at the time of the violation, so the $500 may not be waived. Now, she has to get that server training within the 30 days, and it's my understanding that has been accomplished. But again, that $500 is maybe waived if the individual serving has server training and simply made a mistake. At that time, there is that understanding that they were trained but made a mistake. The issue is not trained and serving alcohol.
It's a practical problem that I can start working as a server and I don't have any server training available for me for 2 weeks or a month. How often is the server training? You probably told me last time we met, but I forgot.
Monthly? Couple times?
That's a health question.
Preston's coming up to answer how often server training is offered.
Good afternoon. Server training is offered on a minimum of around 3 times a month, and we have the flexibility with if an officer in space to add more classes. Currently, with like in-person classes, we cap it around when we're using City Hall, about 50 or 60 individuals. Virtual server training can have about 250. And those are various evenings throughout the month.
So 3 times a month?
Generally 3 times a month minimum. For sure, 3 times a month. There's been some months where in the past we had 6 or 8 to fit with the demands.
Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think we'll, even though I think we have some reluctance to issue a fine, I think, I don't know, and I'm not an attorney, but I think that now she has her server training, so to me, technically, we could waive it. That's just that's my junior attorney opinion, which counts exactly for nothing. Anyway, do we have any comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
Yeah, I would agree that I think that there should be maybe a revisit of the ordinance. So if I start at Brewbird on Friday and I make a mistake on Saturday, I'm getting penalized personally, not just the organization, correct?
Yes.
I mean, and I respect the fact that there's 3 trainings a month, which should give me, the opportunity to get trained pretty quick. But I don't know that I love the way the ordinance reads, given the situation we just talked about.
Well, and to be clear, these are sanctions or, against the organization and not against the individual. The individual then, I believe, goes to municipal court to see if there are any sanctions there.
Well, my understanding was that the server also was penalized.